Hello humans, and welcome back to another episode of Sparks Conversation. Sorry, I should have cleared my cough before I started. However, I didn't. So what are you gonna do, sack me? But nonetheless, let's get stuck into today's podcast. And the topic of today's podcast is, do you need to track calories to successfully lose body fat? And this is something, obviously, with the influx of clients that I've got at the moment, with it being January, it's a very common question or a decision that I need to make to the individual, because obviously, there's a few things that dictate fat loss. There's a few things. There's tons of things that dictate fat loss, and being able to understand these and subsequently find the best approach that works for the client, the individual, is going to be the best or the most appropriate way to facilitate that fat loss. And in terms of this, we need to decide, where is this client in their journey? Like, are they very new to fitness, or are they quite well versed in the industry, and do they know what to do, basically? Because if you think about it, we need to know, in some regard, to some level, what we are putting into the body. And by putting into the body, we mean calories, we mean food, we mean energy. And the way we normally track this is calories, kcals. That is the easiest metric that we can measure to understand how much an individual is consuming. And therefore, if we know how much we are putting in, we can then monitor that. And whether we decide to track calories or not is, again, based on the individual. There's a few different approaches. So with most clients, what I would normally do is I would say, where are you right now? Not as in location, not as in are you in Barbados, as in, what are you eating right now? Because what you want to do, or what I would try to do, is limit the friction or the disparity between what they are doing and what they need to do to get the result that they want. Because if you go in and try and reinvent them in a week, in 2 weeks, they'll get overwhelmed. They'll feel like this is something that they can't adhere to. And adherence is the number one thing when it comes to fat loss. If we can get a client to stick to something for a prolonged period of time, or like I said, obviously we don't always want it to be fat loss, but a prolonged period of time, they're going to have more success in the long run in terms of their success with what they're doing in the gym. It doesn't always have to be fat loss. So what we need to think about is, right, we've collected some information on what this person is eating. So if they are not a fan of calorie counting, they might have had a bad experience from it in the past. They might really not have the time or the energy to be able to learn it, which we'll talk about more later on. But what we can do is look at what they're eating and look at the kind of low-hanging fruit that we can get, and we can improve straight away. So if we can look at someone's diet and there is some glaringly obvious things that can be improved, quote unquote, to their goal. For example, they're having 2 takeaways a week. Why are we doing this? What void are you filling by having those takeaways? So let's say one of them is a social occasion. It was a birthday. That's fine. I'm not going to tell you not to enjoy that. But if you're doing the other one because you are or have been too lazy to meal prep, or you haven't made time to create the food, then we start to think, right, let's try and improve that decision there. Let's improve that nutritional decision, because what that's going to do is net lower your calories across the week without having to track calories, and it's going to kind of improve your adherence to your calorie goal and probably end up with you getting a better result in the short term and the medium term, which might in turn tie you into the process a little bit more. Because nothing motivates clients more than results. If they see their physique changing, if they see the progress that they're getting, more often than not, they make themselves. The times where people struggle is when they're not getting results, when they're not seeing the results for the effort that they put in. That is when most people kind of really struggle. So that would be how I'd first approach things if someone didn't want to track calories. So you'd be looking at, where can I make those improvements straight away, and where can I improve their nutritional decision making so that they can see an improvement in the way they look, the way they feel, and the way they perform. Sometimes that involves a little bit of reframing. Sometimes we need to reframe our thoughts around food and how that is a reward system, how we use it as an emotional regulation, but that's a conversation for a different podcast. So if you've already knocked out those low-hanging fruits, and I'm going to sneeze. If you've already knocked out those low-hanging fruits and there is more that we want to be able to do, then we could be looking at calorie tracking, okay? Because if you've never calorie tracked before, there will be a period where you will be learning it. And I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 times, the first time you do it, it's clunky, you don't like it, it takes too long. All you want to do is just eat that food. You don't want to be weighing everything out. But I'm telling you, the first time you do it, it then becomes easier. There's tons of apps out there now. Some even have voice recognition where you can say, can you track 2 potatoes for me? and they will do it. Like, that's legit decent. Well, I didn't have that growing up. I had chicken and rice 3 times a day and 5,000 protein shakes that had 1,000 calories in them, but don't judge me. So when you start tracking, it's going to feel weird. You're going to be like, why am I weighing a potato? Like, but what we're doing with that is we are understanding and we're beginning to learn food amounts, food quantities, food values. So very soon, after a week, 2 weeks, you'll be looking at the same food on your plate. You might even be weighing it out still and be thinking, look, like, I know this is 100 grams of potatoes. Like, I know this now. Like, I can eyeball that. And what we're doing there is we're embedding a skill. We're embedding or learning or developing a skill that's going to help you later down the line. And as long as it doesn't get too OCD, or it doesn't take too much control over your life relative to your goal, it can be a positive thing. So that's where I'd be thinking, right, calorie counting can help when we've seen or we've elicited the most response we can get from not tracking. Because remember, tracking provides the next level of accuracy for your results. So you can get to a certain point, but then it becomes the case of if we don't know exactly what you're putting in, or more accurately what we're putting in, we'll struggle, or we will be more likely struggle to get that more fine-tuned result. And this is where it's all relative to where you are on your training and your kind of level of commitment to the gym. Just want to lose 5, 6, 7 pounds, you could probably do that without calorie tracking. If you want to get kind of really lean, where you can see like the striations and the six pack, you might want to be calorie tracking and using that as a skill. And I do think it's a tool that everyone should or could go through, because I think more often than not, it helps people regulate things. If someone has gone through a period of calorie tracking, I would argue, except for the outliers, that they are more likely to be able to regulate their scale weight, or the way they feel about themselves, or their body weight long term. And if we're thinking in terms of longevity, like, probably going to get cancelled with this, like, we don't want to be getting too heavy across the span of our life with too much body fat on our body. That's just, if we're looking at kind of co-mortalities and increases to like risk of life, that's probably quite high up there. Like, obesity is one of the #1 killers in the world due to its relationship with other illnesses. Like, I'm not going to kind of beat around the bush there. So if we can kind of monitor ourselves or regulate ourselves due to a period of learning how to track calories and how food relates to the numbers that we quantify with them, we would be in a good place for that. So let's take myself, for example. I have tracked for prolonged periods of my life, and I will go through periods of tracking and not tracking. I might be an outlier, but I don't necessarily get huge unless I'm wanting to get huge or put on weight, and I'm not getting shredded by accident unless I really want to. What I can do by tracking for periods and not tracking for periods is I can just kind of relax during these periods of not tracking and not be so OCD around food, because this is something that I have struggled with in the past. After prep, when I was trying to eat more, I was literally so OCD. I would prep all of my meal for the week. I would be planning it the night before in my MyFitnessPal, and I'm the first to admit that that is not healthy. But I was going through a process. Like, I was working through things in my own head, and I needed to go through that process and then come out the other side. But nonetheless, like, now when I'm not tracking, I know that if I go out for a Nando's, probably better options available, I know that I probably shouldn't be eating loads of food for the rest of the day. Or if I'm running a half marathon today and training, I know that I need to eat a little bit more carbohydrate. Like, for me right now, it's not as OCD as it has been, and I'm completely fine with that. And I know around summertime there'll be a point where I'll go full throw myself into the calorie counting matrix, and I will just literally be focused on that outcome, because I know that the more accurately I track, the more accurately I'll get the result out the other side. And again, this is just relevant to your goal. If you are very happy with how you're looking, you don't have to be doing any of these things. So I do think at some point you could be looking at calorie tracking as a way to improve your composition long term, or improve your understanding of food so you can regulate yourself later down the line. But other than that, thank you for listening for today's podcast. Hopefully I don't get cancelled for this. If I've offended you, I don't care. But yeah, other than that, have a great day, a great life, and I'll speak to you soon.